strings on my guitar, quarters in my mason jar, a smile from a stranger on the street. I will give it all back, all that I receive, 'cause nothing in this whole wide world belongs to me. My body, hair, and eyes, this great blue sky, the gift of singing loud, playing proud. I'll take everything I learned, and even everything I earned. I'll take everything this life has brought to me, and I will give it all back, I receive, 'cause nothing in this whole wide world belongs to me. Give it all back, all that I receive, 'cause nothing in this whole wide world belongs to me.
I'm Practitioner Lozzi, and I welcome you to Hilltop Spiritual Center's Sunday celebration service. As we explore living the abundant life, I know that behind, flowing through and circulating all life is the divine life, God, that giver of life, which like 1,000 suns radiates brilliantly its good, its blessing of abundance in every aspect of all life, spiritually, materially, emotionally, so that we are, like the divine, expanding into an infinite potential of good. I know this service affirms that and blesses us, and for this truth, I am so grateful, and so it is. Our reading today is from the 13th century poet Jalaluddin Rumi, entitled A Secret to Grass. When I run after what I think I want, my days are a furnace of stress and anxiety. If I sit in my own place of patience, that I want flows to me, and without pain. From this I understand that what I want also wants me, is looking for me and attracting me. There is a great secret here for anyone who can grasp it. I invite you for today's meditation to contemplate these words from Ernest Holmes. Let them wash over you, resonate within you, and awaken your own knowing of truth. I know there is a power for good, which is responding to me and bringing into my experience everything necessary to my unfoldment, to my happiness, to my health, to my peace, and to my success. I know there is a power for good that enables me to help others and to bless the whole world. So I say quietly to myself, there is one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. It is flowing through me, circulating in me. I am one with its rhythm. My heart beats with the pulsation of the universe, in serenity, in peace, and in joy. My whole physical being is animated by the Divine Spirit. And if there is anything in it that does not belong, it is cast out, for there is one perfect life in me now. And so I say to myself, I am guided daily so that I shall know what to do under every circumstance, in every situation. Divine intelligence guides me in love, in joy, and in complete self-expression. Desiring that the law of good alone shall control me, I bless and prosper everything I am doing. I multiply every activity. I accept and expect happiness and complete success. Realizing that I am one with all people, I affirm there is a silent power flowing through me and them, which blesses and heals and prospers, makes happy and glad their pathway. And realizing that the world is made up of people like myself, I bless the world and affirm that it shall come under the divine government of good, under the divine providence of love, and under the divine leadership of the Supreme Intelligence. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
When I run after what I think I want, my days are a furnace of stress and anxiety. If I sit in my own place of patience, that I want flows to me without pain. And isn't that what we all want? We want that which we desire to flow to us without pain. So this month we're starting a new series of talks, and they are all about your abundant life and what that means and how we get there. And I'll give you some truth in advertising right up front, that this series of talks is really based on a spiritual approach to abundance. It's really more a spiritual approach to living a life without care, without lack, and without fear. In order to get there, it's about how we get our minds straight with God. So this whole series is being kind of centered around a specific guy by the name of Dallas Willard. There's a couple other resources that I'm using, but something that he says in his book, Life Without Lack, I think is a beautiful way to move in here. He says, the experience of a life without lack depends first and foremost on the presence of God in our lives, because the source of this life is God itself. And so to live a life without lack is to anchor our life in the experience of the divine itself. So, this week we We paid homage to one of the great patriots, one of the great statesmen of our time, someone that many of us have known and sort of grown up with. And I'm talking about Congressman John Lewis. And there was a reporter that had spoken with him a few months ago. And she was talking about the current situation that we're in, the pandemic, the economic devastation that is affecting everyone, the ecological devastation that is literally global. And she asked him what she thought about this. And he reflected. He was a man of great joy and of great insight. And as he reflected upon his time in Congress, as he reflected on his time in the Civil Rights Movement and the Voting Rights Act, what he said, I think, is true. He said, we'll get through this. And here's the deal. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this in a change of consciousness. I truly believe that that's kind of where we go. But people have suffered since time immemorial. There have been plagues, there have been pandemics, there has been war, there has been devastation, and people have gotten through. That's something that the ancient Hebrews understood as well. In fact, there's a poem attributed to one of the great warrior kings of those people, probably 2,700 years ago. And it's a poem that you've probably heard, but have not listened to. And what I mean by that is it's one of those poems that has become so sentimentalized that it's on, get well cards and sympathy cards. It's often read at memorials and funerals. And so when we hear it, we don't really let it sink in. But I'm going to ask you now to just let yourself listen to this poem, to listen to it, maybe for the first time, or as if you're listening to it for the first time. The Lord is my shepherd, and I lack nothing. He lets me rest in grassy meadows. He leads me to restful waters. He keeps me alive. He guides me in proper paths for the sake of his good name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no danger because you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they protect me. You set a table for me right in front of my enemies. You bathe my head in oil, and my cup is so full it spills over. Yes, goodness and a faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the divine's house as long as I live. So to me, this is the template of what it means to live an abundant life. And think of the first line. The Lord is my shepherd. What does that mean? What it means is that we recognize that there is a power greater than us, that loves us, that desires our good, that is wise and caring, and that we take refuge in that. Anybody that has ever been in recovery knows that one of the first steps on the path of recovery is recognizing that we are not in control of our life. Because when we pretend that we are, this is where the mischief and mayhem starts. And so, essentially, importantly, it's the recognition that we take refuge in the wisdom and guidance of that which is greater, more compassionate, more loving, and more wise. And then the poem goes on beautifully. He leads me to grassy meadows and by still waters. And think about this, because one of the things that I know, either out hiking in the backcountry or in rural parts, even where we live, or on the motorcycle, is you often pass, flocks of sheep or herds of cows, and they're resting in the pasture, they're resting in the meadow. And what kind of sheep is resting and taking refuge in a meadow? A sheep that is full, that's not hungry. A sheep that feels safe and protected. And what kind of sheep passes still waters? It's the same thing. And so the vision already is of an animal, of a sheep or a cow that is feeling so safe and so secure and so full that they're able to take rest and be at ease. And that it guides us, that when we're in this place of sufficiency, when we're in this place without care, then we allow ourselves to be guided by this divine wisdom. And it follows us to the good path, a path where we may live generously and openly. And then it says, that you set a table before me in the midst of my enemies. Well, the ancient Hebrews understood exactly what this meant, that a table, a meal, is a place where a covenant is established. It is a place of reconciliation, of forgiveness, of creating something together. So really what it is saying is, if I follow this guidance, I will live without care and I will have no enemies. And then there's this beautiful sense, that you pour oil on my head. Again, going back to the ancient Hebrews, they understood what this meant was the being bathed and nurtured and pampered, so much so that our cup flows over. There is enough, and that it is generous. And so this is our meditation this month as we consider this idea of our abundant life, of living without lack, of living free of care. And, like I said, the very beginning of this is understanding that we are not in control. Because let's be very honest, what happens when we think we're in control? Just read the news. What's going on? There's a pandemic that is globally raging as a result of catastrophic climate change, as a result of the changing of environments that is going unabated globally. It is devastating economies. It is breaking up families. It's a horrendous experience that we're in. And this is our idea. It's almost like that story of the sorcerer's apprentice, right? That we keep thinking we know how to fix this thing, and every time we think we know how to fix this thing, we kind of make it worse, or we try to ignore it, or we go into magical thinking, or whatever the case may be. I think it's important for us to understand a couple things right off the bat. First, ecological devastation is real. It's not a hoax. It's not being perpetrated by one group or another. There's no profit in it. The economic devastation that our country is experiencing, that perhaps you yourself or your family is experiencing, it's real. It's unprecedented. It's like nothing any of us have experienced before. And the pandemic, it's not a hoax. It's not going to disappear after the elections. It's not anyone's fault per se, but it is here. We can't change anything that we don't take responsibility for. And so for us to move to a place where we can move to what John Lewis says, we will get better, it's important then that we begin to approach this from a different way, a way where we're not trying to battle, and a way when we're not trying to control, but really we are seeking a higher wisdom in this whole thing. One of the things that I'm going to offer is this as a meditation, and it is this. Again, from Dallas Willard, he says, let this be your mantra. I interact with all sources of power in the universe through my mind. Something that the ancient mystics understood intuitively. Something that great metaphysicians of the early New Thought movement began to articulate. And something that we understand in neuroscience more and more and more. From a spiritual perspective, from an emotional perspective, from a physical perspective, from an intellectual perspective, everything begins in mind. Our understanding of the divine, our relationship to the universe, our relationships to each other, all begins in mind. And so the first part of our practice of living an abundant life is learning the power of mind, that we interact with all sources of power in the universe through our mind. Something that I'm learning very, very much these days is that when you get hurt, there's pain. And when there's pain, it influences your perception of things. It's how you organize your life. You know, one of the things that we're discovering in our household here after our surgeries is, you know, that we think about everything that we're doing. We're moving really slow and very ponderously because we're moving to avoid pain and to support healing. But, you know, here's the deal. Whether we've crashed a motorcycle or have lost a job or been rejected or have gone through a divorce or a sickness, every one of us has gotten hurt. And every one of us at some level or another feels pain. But here's what happens is that when we get hurt, that pain becomes a filter through how we engage with our mind. We try to protect ourselves. We try to avoid things. We see the world a certain way. And all these things begin to influence how we approach things and how we appreciate things. But you know, something that ancient wisdom teaches us is that we can change the way we use our mind in relationship to this. St. Paul wrote in the letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verse 11, if you're keeping score, he says, I have learned to be content in all things. Now, what he's saying here, I don't believe, is that I have learned that this is as good as it gets, or that I have learned to simply succumb to what is. No, what he's saying is I have learned to allow myself, to train myself to be content in all things. Because when I do that, you know, resources begin to open with me. We literally begin to create new neural pathways in our mind. We learn to think differently. The brain operates differently. That doors that appeared to not even be there heretofore are now open for us. Resources that we didn't know existed now become available. That something radical and profound happens when we allow our mind to be in a place of contentment, as opposed to a place of pain or fear or magical thinking. Because we often give our power away by filtering everything through our pain body, or our pain senses, our hurt. And sometimes what we'll do is we'll even resort to magical thinking. You know, and magical thinking is sort of believing if we don't think about it, it will go away. Or we narcotize ourselves or deaden ourselves. We want to avoid the pain. But there is a way that we can begin to train ourselves differently. And when we begin to do that, then we begin to understand and open ourselves to this new way of appreciating everything that's going on. I want to tell you that if we choose to ignore this, if we choose to ignore this moment of time, if we choose not to let go of looking at everything from pain or magical thinking, we as individuals, we as a community, we as a nation, we as a species could lose everything. The stakes, I believe, are that high. And yet what we also know is that if we want the world to flourish, we must flourish. If we want the world to be a place where there is no fear, then we must arrive at a place where there is no fear. The reality is this: one way or another, we will arrive at global consciousness. And so, how do we get there? How do we get there in a way that we take refuge and allow ourselves to be guided by something that is greater and more powerful? And the real question is, how do we begin to engage our mind in such a way that we can resource that which this loving presence is making available to us now, that wisdom that is available to us now? And I want to offer it in kind of a three-step plan, if you would. And here's the deal about a spiritual practice. It's a practice. Spirituality has a lot more to do with discipline than it does with inspiration. If we wait to be inspired, then we watch the world move past us. Any great teacher, any great mystic, any great innovator, anybody that has excelled to the full experience of who they are, has done so by a practice, a discipline. And so I'm going to offer each of us a discipline, a practice daily for this month on this theme. The first part of the practice is this: to read, ideally to memorize the 23rd Psalm. And I think memory is really a good thing. I know as a Freemason, memory work is a really important part of our practice, of our discipline, because what happens is you're waiting in line, you're having to do something, you're feeling anxious, it's 3 a.m, and all of a sudden you have access to a library in your mind that is accessible to you at any time that you want. And so memory work is the best way. And if it takes a while to get there, then every day, every morning, read the 23rd Psalm. And the second thing in the practice is this, because we're conditioning our mind, is to engage the imagination, to let yourself be in that place. Imagine what it would be like to be a loving shepherd, looking out for and caring for your flock. Imagine you're a sheep and what it feels like to be guided, to be led, to be taken care of, to live a life without fear. Imagine what it would be like to have a table set for you and someone who up until now you have thought as an enemy, and you're sharing a meal together, and you're reconciling, and you're healing. And so the second part of the practice is this: engage the imagination, let yourself be there. And then the third part of it is to listen. What do you hear? What guidance are you getting? What are you receiving? And to trust this. If New Thought teaches us anything, it teaches us that we can trust our intuition. And that's what we're doing. We're building a way to tap into our intuition through the use of our imagination. And so, can we follow the lead? Can we let ourselves be led? Can we let go of this fantasy that we have created that we are in control of our lives, and realize that there is a power greater than us that is available to each and every one of us, and that wants our best interest in mind? And finally today, I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about something called solidarity. So we talk a lot about conscious giving. We talk a lot about tithing. We talk a lot about service, and these are good and important. But solidarity, I think, ups the game, because solidarity means I belong. I belong. There are those that have my back. And likewise, because they have my back, I have their back. They can depend on me, and I can depend on you. Solidarity means this, that I have and I can reap all the rewards of what it means to belong to a fellowship, and that I also carry the weight of responsibility. And so my invitation is for you to join a fellowship, a solidarity with the Hilltop Spiritual Center. And I'm grateful for all the people that are a part of how we create our community. Annie and I are experiencing the amazing generosity that is pouring forth in anything and everything that we need, that we are really able to be engaged in our healing without care and anxiety or fear. And so, my blessing to each and every one of us is recognizing that there is an infinite presence that loves us, that is wise and good and generous, and that it invites us to take refuge in it. It allows us to be guided to the very good, where we may feed in grassy meadows, and drink in still waters, where we may dine with those whom we fear. And even in times like this, no, we're going to get through this. There is a way out, and that way out is making its way to us. And that is my blessing. And so for you, and those whom you love, and those who you receive love from, and from the bottom of my heart, and from all of us here at the Hilltop Spiritual Center, I wish you all many, many blessings. And so it is.
It's a glorious day on the planet I love. Let me tell you what I'm thinking of, 'cause I've been wondering why it was, but it's just life doing what it does. We keep trying to mess it up, they keep trying to bring us down. So I'm just gonna smile at everything around, 'cause I've got earth beneath my feet and the sky above. It's a glorious day on the planet I love. And don't tell me about someday somehow, 'cause all I need is right here, right now. I got some rhythm and I got some rhyme. I got my music and I got my mind. We were sinking in circles, imprisoned in the past. Now I'm just gonna be, and I'm free at last, 'cause I've got earth beneath my feet and the sky above. It's a glorious day on the planet I love, because there's children playing somewhere. How's life on Jupiter? I don't care, no, 'cause we've got lovers just laying there. Oh yeah. Well, I'm no hero, I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being afraid, 'cause I've been wondering why it was, but it's just life doing what it does. And I've got earth beneath my feet and the sky above. I'm gonna rise above that old push and shove, 'cause I've got earth beneath my feet and the sky above. Ah yeah, it's a glorious day on the planet I love. Whoa, oh, oh, it's a glorious day now. Oh, 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 it's a glorious day. Yeah. Oh, 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 it's a glorious day. A glorious day on the planet I love. A glorious day on the planet I love. A glorious day on the planet I love.